Okay, in our last presentation before lunch, I don't think I'm going to really have to introduce Jay per se. I think everybody's seen and heard from him a number of times, but he's going to come up and tell us about how you can take a small stone and hopefully, maybe I shouldn't be talking about killing birds with as many Audubon people. But anyhow, solve several problems with one small solution, and that's going to be neighborhood greenways.
Thank you very much. I will try not to kill any birds while I'm presenting. So, thank you all, and get right into it. And basically, the big picture I'm going to talk about is a proposal for a new type of infrastructure that we can install in the Houston region. And it's a lot in the Houston Bike Plan. There's been a lot of discussions about having a toolbox that we use, somewhat related in a similar way to Andres Dewani talking about in different areas you use different tools. And so this is one of the tools that I think we should add to our toolbox. Called Neighborhood Greenways. Houston Tomorrow, our mission is to improve the quality of life for all the people of the Houston region. And to have slides. So this is really part of Complete Streets. There was a much broader discussion of Complete Streets, but I just want to make the point that the idea of Complete Streets is the wild idea that we should have streets that are safe for all our people, and regardless of their age, ability, or mode, and that the people designing and investing and building streets should be trying to think that way when they do it. And that is not what we have done in the Houston region previously. Let's use this. So it's doing context sensitive. It's doing the appropriate thing for the appropriate place. It's a key point is Complete Streets as a philosophy. There's been, under Mayor Parker's direction, a revolution in the nerdy back end of how the city of Houston does streets. And we've succeeded. We've done a much better job than cities like Austin and other very progressive cities that have built a lot more bike lanes than we have at this point. But the city of Houston completely redid the way the Public Works Department thinks of streets. And it's a philosophy of, as we build our city, it should be safe for all people. And every single project, we should be thinking about how is this place going to be a safe place for kids to walk and bike. And it's not, so Complete Streets, all right, my next slide is what it's not. And it's multimodal. But it's not a bike lane on every street. And it's not single projects. There's a lot of discussion of the one Bagby Street downtown that Andres Dewani would trash the swales. And that is a street that's somewhat better, but Complete Streets is a philosophy. It's not one thing. And it's not, my mission is not to install one complete street in every council district. My mission is that every street the city of Houston builds is improving that neighborhood. And it's not hard, it's not more expensive. One little personal note that informs a lot of this work is I had a very strange thing happen last year. I had a rare neurological disorder called Guillain-Barré, where you get completely paralyzed and then it goes away. And so after getting out of the hospital, I was in the wheelchair for a month. And I'd been in the hospital for 2 months. And so I insisted upon freedom and that I wanted to go ride the bus to get to work. And so I did that in a wheelchair, and so I tried to get around Houston in a wheelchair, and it's not exactly easy. And I did have where I ended up at Greenway at 59, where I was at. I had gone to a doctor and then gone to the bank, and I reached the end of the sidewalk. And the TxDOT was doing something, reconstructing the underpass, and it was impossible to get to the other side of 59. And so I didn't discover that till I had already struggled to get to the intersection and had to try to figure out how to turn around and in the wheelchair. And so then I had to go back from Greenbrier to Kirby to cross 59. And so it was an extra mile of wheelchairing. And so people who actually live with wheelchairs have to plan out every single day. And they know that most of the city of Houston and most of our region is not accessible to them. And so in the past, I understood that we needed ADA compliance, and that was probably a cool thing, and maybe we should sue the city someday. But I never really understood. Now it's different. Now it is not acceptable that we have neighborhoods that are inaccessible to some of our people. And so that is part of this work. So all municipalities and counties are supposed to have an ADA transition plan. If you want to do one thing, you should be asking for new ADA transition plans, and we need to, the City of Houston ones was done, I think 15 years ago after they were sued and successfully sued, but it's not working. So, really key why we want to do this is the more people walk and bike, the less we weigh, and that's an issue here in Houston, and it's this problem, pedestrian fatalities across the Houston region. And it all depends on how fast the car is going when you're hit. And so if you are a person walking or riding a bicycle and a car does hit you, and the car is going 40 miles an hour, there's an 80% chance you will die. If that car is only going 20 miles an hour and hits you, there's a 95% chance you'll survive. And so just bringing speeds of the cars down a little bit can save a lot of lives. And so that's what we had a bill in the last session, actually worked with the City of Houston, and the mayor's office was pushing this, and the Public Works Department wanted it to change the speed limit in Houston and to lower the speed limit on residential streets. And so this is still a huge priority, is that there's no reason that anyone should be driving faster than 25 miles an hour on any residential street in a city where humans live. But we didn't get it, so next time we're gonna go at it again. And so there are equity issues here. Older people and people of color are more likely to be the victims of a pedestrian fatality. Did I go away? Okay. We had a people-powered bike ped count a while ago where we had volunteers stand on the corner with a sheet of paper and mark down how many people they saw. And one of the little patterns we saw is that the higher income your zip code is, the less people we saw walking and biking. And so we as a region are pretty heavily invested in cars, and we continue to massively fund cars. And that's an equity. That means we're not investing in low-income people's lives, and that we're actually investing in these people's lives. And another key is that when we did the study, we also counted cars, and that in general, the places where you saw more cars are also the places where you saw more people walking and biking. And so that's why I will talk a little bit about Bayou Greenways is an amazing, beautiful thing, but you need to actually have safe ways to get to the places, the actual on the street. And that wherever you're trying to get in your car is also where people are trying to get in walking and biking. And so that really, so Houston leads the nation in spending on roads per capita. And if anyone tells you we don't have money for potholes, they're lying. And if they tell you we have a crisis of not having funding, they're lying. We are spending more money than any other major metro. And we're not spending it in your neighborhood, and we're generally spending it mostly on new roads, and most of those are unnecessary. So we have a Complete Streets Coalition with a lot of people, and I'm going to skip forward. Complete Streets, you can imagine that's a lot of places in Houston, and it can be just slightly changing it and making it a more human place. And so that's the general Complete Streets. But so here's what I'm talking about. Bayou Greenways is amazing and terrific. And we will have this asset, and we share it amongst all our people. And the thing is, how did that kid get there? And can that kid safely walk from 5 blocks away to get to the Bayou Greenways network? And if that's not possible, then we have a real problem, and it's an equity issue. And so, so this is where Neighborhood Greenways comes in. And it's a proposal for a new system. And we could envision the system reaching all the residential areas of our city. And I'll explain what it is. It's basically, you find a grid network of streets that already don't have a lot of people driving on it, already low traffic streets. And you sort of hash out a grid. And then you do little things. You make those streets extremely safe. And you design them ideally for 20 miles an hour car travel. And it's little things like traffic circles. Traffic circles are good, just so you know. Roundabouts are good. They're safer and they work better than stop signs and stoplights. And so you can do little neighborhood traffic circles. One of the keys is the bulb outs, which essentially at the end of the block, or if you have a maybe mid-block pedestrian crossing, you make the actual drivable street narrower. And the beautiful thing there is that all humans, if they are driving a car and the road gets narrower, all of them will slow down and they won't realize that they're being a very safe driver. And the part of the key of neighborhood greenways is that people won't know that they're actually protecting the children in that neighborhood because they won't realize it. Because when there are safe streets, when there are street trees, when there's street art, people drive slower. And you don't realize, and that's part of the problem of Houston. We've designed our roads to have a design speed of way over the speed limit. And so you feel wrong. If you're driving at a safe speed, it feels like you're screwing up. And so I don't think Houstonians are inherently jerks, but the system instructs you to be a jerk. And so that's what we're changing. And speed bumps. Speed bumps are useless on a street that's designed to encourage people to drive 50 miles an hour. And so no one should be putting any speed bumps anywhere unless you actually design the street for slow travel. Once you design the street right, speed bumps are useful. But designing a street to encourage everyone to drive 50 and then slapping a speed bump on it just screws everything up. And so this is what it looks like. It's little infrastructures, little bulb outs. And the idea is we can retrofit. We can go into all of our neighborhoods and do this. And part of the Greenway part these slides are from Portland, and in their model, all of the bulb outs, all the little infrastructure they've added are actually bioswales that hold a little bit of water in a flooding event, and then have a little greenery and clean that water. And the city of Portland actually is doing their entire neighborhood greenways network with federal water quality money. And I think that's very appropriate for Houston as well. And we could put a tiny little bit of green space and a tiny little bit of flood protection and a tiny little bit of water quality treatment in every neighborhood where we do this. And that's, this kind of thing. And one of the fun parts about traffic circles and the bulb outs is the neighborhoods could sort of take ownership of them. And they could decide how to plant them or to put art in them or to do whatever they want to make it their own. And it can mean little things like this and just sort of cheap infrastructure. The most expensive part of this network is going to be getting across the busy streets. And so that's where you need to have some kind of very good treatment that you probably haven't seen in Houston before. But you have to figure it out. And if you're cruising down Montrose Street and you get to Westheimer, there has to be a safe way to get across that's simple, but we can figure out. And our engineers can figure it out. Another key is wayfinding signs, is for our city and our public institutions to say, you pedestrian, you person in a wheelchair, you riding a bike, you count too, and there's a thing this way, and this is how you get to the museum, it's over there. And so a key of this network is we should have wayfinding signs, which I think a side note is Bayou Greenways needs these signs, and you need to be able to know the downtown's just 2 miles and it will take you 10 minutes to get there, and you need to know that the Social Security office is over there. And so this is the City of Portland's network, and their plan is over a 5-year period to connect 85% of all households in the entire city within walking distance of this network, and it costs $50 million to do that. And the city of Portland is about 600,000 people. The Houston's inner loop is about 600,000 people. The area directly west of the loop that's the same size is actually a little bit more people than in the loop, about 600,000 people. And so for $100 million, you could essentially do the entire urban core of Houston and have all of those have 1.2 million households connected to such a network. The entire city of Houston is about $200 million. The entire Houston region is about $400 million, which is really nothing in terms of transportation infrastructure. The graph I showed you earlier, these are the wrong numbers, but we're spending something like $2.5 billion on roads every year in Houston. So if over a 5-year period we spend $80 million on this, it is a tiny chunk of what we're doing. And one of the fun parts, Seattle's doing the same thing, and they are doing it in a way where their super neighborhoods are empowered to figure it out. And so if your super neighborhood wants a neighborhood greenways network, there's a way to apply with the city to set up your committee, and then your super neighborhood figures out where you want it to be and how it works. And you would have a public works and a planning department make sure that the things connect at the edges of the super neighborhoods. But I think this is, there's a lot of people that have invested a lot in super neighborhoods in Houston, but a lot of people feel that it's not really integrated into the city. And I think this would be a great way to make that super neighborhoods have a meaningful job to do and say, let's design this network at a neighborhood level. And so we have a bunch of proposals. We sort of, through Harris County, asked the Houston Endowment for about $2 million to do this pilot, would be the near north side, and it didn't work out, but we're going to keep trying. But this is the kind of thing you're talking about. And you can see some things in this map that you prioritize connections to transit and schools and shopping. You figure out a network. And then the key in this one is the Bayou Greenways. And a lot of good people, the Parks Board knows about this example, is that there's an amazing Bayou Greenway that runs right through this neighborhood. And at first, no one thought about actually connecting it to the neighborhood. And so at the little point where the dark green line meets the light green line, they are building that connector right now. And it's a crucial thing. We have to realize that we need easy access to the Bayou Greenways network all along the way. And then just getting, in that particular situation, it's a hill. And so now there's going to be a sidewalk that goes up that little hill to get into the neighborhood. But then once you're in the neighborhood, it's the same old dangerous Houston streets. And so then we need to connect them. Here's a proposal for Montrose. One thing it illustrates is in our old, traditional development in Houston is, of course, walkable urban transit-oriented development, as we all know. That we were a city designed around walkability, designed around light rail transit until 1937. And Montrose and Bel Air and the Heights were transit suburbs. And so they were designed so that when you got off the train, it was easy to walk and go by the store on the way home. And so all these old traditional neighborhoods, it's really easy to bang out a grid, basically. And so in Montrose, it'd be very simple to figure out the network. And by the way, on that point, all of our traditional neighborhoods that were designed this way, they do not, the rail was all ripped up in 1937. But those neighborhoods, the people in those neighborhoods still walk a lot more, drive a lot less, and have lower carbon footprints than people in other neighborhoods because the urban grid was designed for walking. It was assumed that you would walk a lot. This is actually coming along, it probably will be the pilot. This is the OST South Union neighborhood, the end of the Southeast light rail line. It stops at MLK and Griggs. And there's a lot of interesting things happening here. There's a sort of a transit-oriented development happening, affordable housing development happening there that is the model. We should, as a state, we should not spend a single dime of our affordable housing money on single-family homes. All of it should be what they're doing at MLK and Griggs. But this neighborhood is into it, and there's a group called the Southeast Houston Transformation Alliance that has been trying to figure out how we can make this whole neighborhood safer, more walkable, and healthier. And so this is their vision for their neighborhood. And they figured out there's some money. And there's the Greater Southeast Management District had some federal money basically left over. And so they're going to try it. And so this hopefully will be our first pilot. And it'll connect a very low-income, traditionally African-American neighborhood to the Bayou Greenways network, to light rail, to their schools. So it's really exciting. And one of the keys here is that this is infrastructure that works for low-income neighborhoods and high-income neighborhoods. And it would work for all of us. And I don't have a slide about it. I'll go ahead and say on the pilot side, there's a proposal. The Buffalo Bayou Park is an amazing achievement that we have all achieved. And it's about $100 million worth of investment in this amazing facility. And then Memorial Park over here is going to be a $300 million investment in this amazing facility. And it is not possible to get between those two things safely. And so neighborhood greenways is the way. And so for about $1 million, you could connect that $400 million worth of investment. And so there's a proposal to do, if you know Memorial Park, Blossom Street, all the way over to where there's a pedestrian bike bridge over Memorial, and drop down and just make that little route extremely safe. And that's how we do it. The other proposal is to somehow do apparently there's a proposal to do like a raised bike ped lane over Memorial Drive, which would cost $50 million. And so for that much, you could do the entire inner loop neighborhood greenway system. So I hope that will become the pilot along with this one. And a couple more examples. There's a group called Livable West Houston now, and it's some people who live out in unincorporated Harris County, and they want their neighborhood to have access to walking and biking. And so this is their neighborhood, and you can even do this in a very poorly designed, inefficient suburban sprawl neighborhood. You can figure it out. It's a little more difficult, but you can do it. And this gets into where it's the toolbox situation where they're sort of proposing this. The blue line would be sort of a Bayou Greenway type treatment, but these are smaller Bayou tributaries. And then in this situation, clearly Attic Satsuma should have an actual protected bike lane. And so when we're looking at every neighborhood, we need to think about what's appropriate where, but you're trying to connect the grid. And I think this is another fun example. And so this is the Willow Waterhole area over on the southwest side. And they have all kinds of utility things and ditches. And so they have envisioned a basically ditch greenways network. And this is their ditch greenway network. And it's beautiful. And then when I came in to talk to them, I was saying that this is perfect, but you don't have to be afraid of the actual street. And you can include some streets in this network. And so with a little bit of neighborhood greenway type infrastructure, you could connect this whole neighborhood. And so I hope that this would be a really fun pilot because there'd be all kinds of weird things and little utility corridors where you try to figure out how to do basically a little version of a Bayou Greenway. And so the idea is we want to figure out every super neighborhood this way. And so that is neighborhood greenways. There's much discussion in the City of Houston bike plan of these kind of things. It's my job to be annoying to everyone. And so right now I'm fighting with everyone, all of my good friends working on the bike plan they think the plan is to have a toolbox and to include something called neighborhood bikeways, which completely ruins the whole damn thing. And it's not about just bikes. It's a key to the complete streets world, which we're really pushing Vision Zero now, which is the idea that we should have zero traffic fatalities, and that we should actually work together to get there, and that we have traditionally your TxDOTs and your HGAC do an amazing amount of work and beautiful things to try to reduce the number of people dying, but we also should have at that table the planning department of all of our cities, and the Public Works Department, and the police, and the fire. We should maybe reconsider the idea that we require bars to have 5,000 parking spaces. We require bars to subsidize people driving home from those bars. So that's the kind of thing we need to reconsider. And so the point is, in the Vision Zero world, it is not really about people riding bikes. 667 people died in the Houston region last year on our roads. Most of them were in cars. About 150 of them were walking, and about 5 of them were riding bikes. And so it's crucial that we start doing things as one whole Houston. And so that I really hope we don't end up with a bike plan that calls them neighborhood bikeways, because that's not the whole game. And essential to my vision for neighborhood greenways is sidewalks. and you don't want people riding bikes on sidewalks. You want people walking on sidewalks. And so I really hope that we can go forward with the neighborhood greenways vision. And I just wanted to leave you with, this slide is just fun. And this whole conference and thinking about cities and urbanism and nature and how do we do density. And this is the Greenspoint Mall, which every couple years there's a whole process of we need a new vision for the Greenspoint Mall. And a bunch of architects have a bunch of different proposals for leaving it basically like that, but changing the way the buildings work or having a very new urbanist pedestrian way in the middle of it. And so we say, why not install Paris? And this is to scale, just part of Paris installed on that parking lot. And so that's what we're talking about. This is how we save the world. And so just the last pitch is everybody has to have their Astrodome angle. And the problem with the Astrodome is the surface parking lots. And so you can actually fit 99 blocks of downtown Houston on the Astrodome surface parking lots. And imagine if you achieved this, if we got rid of the stupid tax cap for the city of Houston, imagine this would solve the city of Houston's budget issues if you could achieve this. And I'm pretty sure that downtown has a lot more parking actually than the Astrodome parking lot. Its surface parking is the devil. I think, and that's maybe where I will leave it, is the conservationists and the urbanists, I think, can agree that surface parking is the devil. So thank you very much.
Let's take a couple of questions. We've actually made it up 15 minutes here.
Yeah,
A lot of fast talking.
Really?
Mostly, some of them just.
Okay, when we get lunch, we get our choice of lunch. And, so.
How would you define residential streets? The
Yeah.
25 mile an hour
Yeah.
zone, or speed limit, I was wondering. what
Yeah,
that
so
would
that's, in the bill we had, there was a sort of traffic engineer nerd way to do it, and it was, I don't even remember what it was, but it was like a certain percentage of the parcels facing the block were residential things. But it generally generally what we have all over Houston is neighborhood streets. But the truth is that that bill 2.0, I'm advocating that we instead just change the default speed limit in Houston will be 25 on all streets, unless it's posted otherwise. It's a safe speed for humans to travel. And that's the point. Do we as a region and as a people value our children's lives more than the speed of travel? And currently you're encouraged to value the speed of travel because of the way the streets are designed, so you think you're messing up if you're not going 50, and it feels really slow. If you were today in Paris driving a car, you would be driving 15 miles an hour probably, and you would feel great about it. Because the streets are cobblestones, because it feels nice, because you don't mind when you're in a good human place. You drive excessive speeds in places that you don't like. And so it sounds like we don't like our Houston region very much. We're trying to escape from the system that we're pouring tons of money into. And so instead, we could start making this a place we want to be and that we value. And I mean, the whole problem, the reason that everyone feels they have to drive 45 miles an hour is the amazingly stupid system of designing our region where that we think humans are supposed to travel 30, 40 miles in a day. That's insane. So we should instead build cities all over the Houston region where that's not assumed, where a lot more humans cannot do that. So.
And I agree, given that we already have this system, kind of playing the devil's advocate, does this plan take into account the potential impact on congestion, where you're slowing traffic, especially in peak travel times?
Well, I guess one point is that to do it correctly, you select streets that already have very low travel. And so that's so the sort of back of the envelope is no, it probably is fine. The city of Portland has actually looked at it, and it does change behavior, and that people choose alternative streets nearby and things. So, I guess in a place in the Montrose situation, it would not impact anything because that's an efficient urban street grid layout, and when you have an efficient urban street grid, it's much easier to travel than on, say, a freeway or any kind of tributary road system. And so in Montrose, it wouldn't do anything. Whereas in the suburban sprawl neighborhood, it might be much greater concern because that in an inefficient, poorly designed neighborhood, if you make one street slower, you could mess up the whole system. So.
Particularly if it was a collector street, yeah.
To add on that, I think that if we're creating more walkable areas and more bikeable areas, then that is going to decrease the amount of traffic anyways.
Yeah, I mean, traffic is caused by TxDOT. That's why traffic is not caused by the Ashby high rise. Traffic is caused by people choosing to live in an inefficient location. And they choose to do that because their housing decision is subsidized by TxDOT. And by, if anybody makes a mistake of voting yes on Prop 7, that's what causes traffic, is people choose to live in a place where they don't have access to life, and they must drive across your neighborhood to get to things. And so every Ashby high-rise we kill, we are increasing traffic. So every neighborhood we can make that's walkable and dense, we are decreasing traffic. Although maybe in that neighborhood there will be a perception of congestion. And that's we have to start thinking of congestion like cholesterol, and there's good congestion and bad congestion. Manhattan, in terms of New York bashing or loving, Manhattan is the most congested place in the world, and it's the most valued place in the world. The humans like the most expensive real estate in the world is Manhattan. The humans enjoy that the most. And so congestion is a good thing. Freeway congestion is not. And freeway congestion is destroying our air and destroying our planet. But urban congestion is okay.
Okay, I just want to say, I like everything you've proposed. And so my question is a practical one about, say it's implemented, about maintenance. Homeowners are responsible for their sidewalks currently in Houston. I mean,
Yeah.
And it's not working.
Yeah.
There's so many terrible sidewalks.
Really? Is it?
Yeah, unmanageable. So how does Portland do it, and how do we do it? How are we going to fix that? Because no matter what you install, if it's not maintained, it's an ongoing problem.
Yeah. So I mean, from one just sort of planning, if I was given the $400 million and could make a grid network of good sidewalks in the city, I think that's a better thing. I think we're in a better situation than we were before that happened. So then number two is it's ridiculous. The system is ridiculous. The next mayor of Houston must solve sidewalks and must fix it. There's some different proposals. West University a while back decided, okay, we're going to fix it, and they created a new tax and instead, but then they said, okay, now the city will be responsible for sidewalk. You no longer are. Let's all just pay into this new little tax. Now SU is complete. Their system is complete. And so we either need that, there's a great proposal from Jeff Carlton so parking requirements are horrible and we should get rid of them. And so if we got rid of parking requirements and instead charge for parking everywhere, put parking meters all over everywhere, and then basically like the Washington Avenue district has become this special purpose parking district thing, and that they put a lot more parking meters into the neighborhood, but then all of the money collected goes straight into building sidewalks in that neighborhood. And so what if we stopped requiring everyone to subsidize driving? And what if we wanted to be more like a free market city? And what if we used the funds that came from that parking management program to build our sidewalk system? And I guess a key there is during the ADA lawsuit that to some extent settled out of court, and the city of Houston agreed to never build another intersection without the proper ramps. So it was a big achievement, but they didn't go as far as they wanted, which was we need a complete sidewalks network. And the lawyers for the city of Houston did the math, and it would cost $2 billion to complete the city of Houston sidewalk network. And the lawyer's proposal in court was that's ridiculous. $2 billion is also not a lot of money in that world. For 2.2 million Houstonians, it's $1,000 each. So how many people here would be willing to put in $1,000 over a 10-year period to have a complete sidewalk network? So we need to solve the sidewalk problem. This is maybe, to some extent, complete streets in the long term is what will make your children live in a safe place. And will give them the freedom of travel and the freedom to know a city. But this is sort of the quick method that we can real quick bring safe streets to every neighborhood with neighborhood greenways. But in the long run, it's ridiculous. We have to fix the sidewalk problem. Mayor Parker wanted to do it, and I don't know. She promised to do it 3 years ago, and I don't know why. I guess I didn't do my job well enough or something, so the next mayor has to do it. So thank you very much. Let's have some lunch.